So, thinking like a journalist. So, as you'd know, teachers make more than 1,500 decisions a day. So, how do journalists compare? Okay, so putting you in the shoes of journalists, these are the kind of things they do every day. Scouting for story ideas. They're pitching ideas as well as taking direction from their editor. They're checking out what the competition is up to, making sure they don't take their exclusives. They're meeting deadlines, often multiple deadlines a day, particularly if they're multimedia journalists, trying to secure exclusives. Building trust with sources so they get onto the stories nice and quick, and that means developing contacts and nurturing those contacts, checking their facts. They have things like, as you would know, libel and slander to worry about, good old defamation, finding interviewees for their stories in a timely manner, researching, finding a story hook or angle that's going to grab the reader, build the readership, shaping that lead paragraph. So it's about 25 words and it answers the key questions. Drafting and redrafting the story to suit their editorial style, responding to editors' feedback, updating breaking stories. One story that I'm working on at the moment is up to version 6 with the editor. It needs a lot of work. A very complex story, a technology story. So, yeah, that can be one of the downsides. Okay, they may be pounding out thousands of words a week, as I was doing about 6,000 words a week as a suburban journalist. It's a shrinking profession with poor pay and resources. They've also got to handle complaints. Their name is on the story, so who is the caller, the complainer, going to ask for? That particular journalist. Activism and justice. They might also see themselves as needing to run particular campaigns. So a series of stories to raise awareness about an issue, maybe get some legislative change, maybe get some funding for an area. But, you know, for journalists, it all comes down to a onesie, one thing, news. So thinking like a journalist, what makes a good news story? It's got to be something new, unusual. It's got to be interesting or significant. It's about people, ideally doing STEM things. So just recapping those key things. These are a good STEM story. New, unusual, significant, about people and STEM related. So what else makes a good STEM story? Maybe the school overcame hurdles. Their NAPLAN results were pretty basic. They were a bump up school, and with this project they were able to extend the students, so they not only met the level they should, but they actually went further. So they may have achieved more. They may be a low ICSEA as well. And the STEM project showed that they were able to tap into resources and punch way above their weight. Okay, so results. The results from the STEM projects were pretty amazing. And student outcomes with regard to learning, behaviour, engagement. It's always a good thing to attribute to a positive STEM project. There might be changes in teaching practice, teaching philosophy, doing something different because of the impact the STEM story had. And the school community may have an extra sense of pride. They may be championing the school because of that STEM project. There may be spin-off benefits, maybe industry liaison, partnerships, business partnerships that lead to students getting maybe part-time work, traineeships, sponsorship for university degrees, that kind of thing. And external recognition. There might be an award. The school might have got a external funding, so not within the education department, although that still is a story. But yeah, certainly if an external body gave them funding, that's great. Here are some bonus tips. So don't overthink it. Accept rejection might happen sometimes and move on, maybe to another publication or media organisation. Think where you can get your easy wins. Now, this might be a local community radio station or a local newspaper, regional newspaper that may be fairly hungry for free content. Think of pitching as a muscle that you need to exercise because it's a transferable skill in the realm of marketing and sales. and when you're going for promotions. You can, as well, with a pitch, you're nailing a short, sharp bio for your school, and that's always handy. So, what are your ideas? Let's hear them on what else makes a good STEM story. We can work on them during the workshop. So I'm pre-recording this. So if you go to the Jamboard or the chat function, I'll look at both and let's have a couple of minutes to try and answer this question. What else makes a good STEM story? Now feel free to add to the Jamboard where I've said pop down some ideas about a STEM story that your school has, and we might go again for some peaceful morning forest songs. So there's the Jamboard again. Another minute. Okay, there we are. There's the 2 minutes. Hope you had time to jot down some ideas about what a good STEM story is. So, recapping that first skill, thinking like a journalist. Why is it newsworthy? Because it's something unusual, it's interesting or significant, it's about people and about STEM. Okay, mini lesson 2, doing your due diligence. Any thoughts on what you should be doing at this step? So, can we take another 2 minute break to ponder and share your thoughts in the chat box? Okay, we might go for a different chat box or the Jamboard. Okay, relaxing bird song by the ocean. We'll do that one for 2 minutes. Okay, so that's a couple of minutes. That might have been a bit of a hard one there, um, but hopefully you've had a chance and we've had a bit of a chat on the Jamboard. So remember the first rule of being a staff member. You know this little guy, probably familiar with him. Never give your boss nasty surprises, please. So the not so good. So these are things I've heard as a journalist. Oh, I'm not sure if I should be talking to journalists. And that's after they've pitched me the story or told me, oh, you should do a story about this. Next. Let me just check with my principal if I can talk to you. And if they've already sent me the pitch, then why have they sent me that pitch if they don't have permission to talk to me? Ouch. Our school will write the story, so just print it verbatim. So no, that's an advertisement, and media organisations aren't there to give free publicity to schools. You've got to earn that column centimetres. You've got to earn that airtime with a story that stands on its own merits. It's strong. It's going to grab readership. So I was sure all of that was off the record. Okay, so ideally, just only say what can be on the record when you're talking to a journalist or you're communicating with a journalist. Um, don't go into the off the record or background territory. It's too tricky. Journalists are doing 1,000 things. They may accidentally, or they might think, oh, that was actually a really good angle. Oh, I'm going to pull that in. Just don't give them the temptation. Just make sure you give them the information they can have. Um, think about what you're telling them. If it could get you sacked or could besmirch your school's reputation, don't go there. You'd know that. You'd know that. Okay, so I know that's what I said, but it's not what I meant. Yes, I've heard that. And that's why it's good to have maybe 3 key messages written out so you've got them there. You know what you'll be talking about. You're not going to stray off. And you can have this even when you're doing a face-to-face interview, or ideally these days it'll be on the phone. Next point. This is a really strong story. You should publish it. Yeah, maybe it's strong, but that's the journalists and the editors and the media organisation's decision. It's not the school's decision. So that the media org does not need that extra pressure. Okay, no one at the school is available to be interviewed. A roadblock, a brick wall that we don't need, particularly if the school has said, hey, you should cover this story. As I said, they're all from real life. I've had to deal with those ones. So this would be better when you're doing your due diligence as a school promoting your story. Does my school community read, listen to, or watch your media organisation? So do you have familiarity with it? Do you know who the journalists are who cover those particular rounds? Have they got a particular slant the way they cover it? Does it align with what you want? So when's their deadline? Find that out. Copy deadline will be different to the photographic deadline to the advertising deadline. So would you send me a list of questions before the interview? Just thinking points, really handy. So if you as an interviewee um, don't know what you're going to be asked, don't know the angle of the story, it can be a bit tricky. But if you're not, you won't be cold, won't be doing a cold interview if you've seen those points before. Feel free to write responses and send them to the journalist. That will also help them if they don't have shorthand and can't get notes down quickly. But it's also, it's your backup if there are issues at your school. Okay, and do you need photographs? If so, of what? So find out specifically. So what you're doing is adding value, and in short, when you're doing your due diligence, the second skill is you've got to secure permission, keep others at your school in the loop. It's best not to work alone. Okay, so third lesson, crafting your story pitch. What is a story pitch? Basically, it's 1 or 2 paragraphs, usually 2, could be dot points, and you're trying to convince a journalist or editor to pick up your story idea and run a positive story, hopefully soon. A media release is a very long story pitch. So who has the time to create that from scratch? Most teachers, most schools don't. So try and be time savvy when you're writing your pitch, because the journalist will be busy as well. Write shorter pitches, to the point, leave the writing, the creative writing to the journalist. Even better, develop rapport with target journalists so they know your school's backstory. So you're starting on the same page and you're basically saving time, particularly if you're going back to the same journalists. So let's reverse engineer. Here's an example of a story that I did. Students actually ran a drone photography company, and they were just from a tiny rural Victorian school, won an international award, just amazing STEM story. Here's how it started. I read about it in an ag magazine, reached out to them, introduced myself, introduced the mag. I was very clear on the story I was writing, 600 words, when the deadline was. Didn't give them a lot of time, but then I didn't have much time. Said 20 minutes phone interview is good. Generally, my stories are done all by phone, and that was even pre-COVID. And trying to organise this interview, yes. And I offered to send them thinking points. So I pitch them, but sometimes a school pitches me. So this is what Stella, a WA principal, did. She's a good contact of mine. Told me about a STEM story they were going to have shortly, and it was about a solar-powered bench recharging stations project. Beautiful story, actually a STEM one because they had Indigenous students design the patterns for those benches. So yeah, lots of elements to this STEAM story. So I've just sort of unpacked this. They told me it was happening shortly. That was the when. They told me who was involved, a couple of schools, one of their feeder schools, and their college as well as university, a careers officer there. They told me what was happening, gave me a video link for more information. So yeah, really, really good, strong pitch. So I love the way that she's just done one sentence, one thought, one sentence, nice and spaced out, not cramped blocks of text. So then I pitched the editor of Education HQ, which is an online news site. And 3 months later, because that's basically when it happened, there's the story about their STEAM project. And they supplied the photo, which is a really good one. We get students and teachers in there. So the nuts and bolts of a pitch. Please keep it short, maximum of 3 key messages. Think of images, high resolution, at least 1 megabyte. Email that, not telephone. They're going to be too busy to take the phone. And the most important thing, have a spokesperson ready. That might be yourself or might be the principal who's available to be quizzed. So pitches have got to answer these questions. Who, what, why, where, how, and when. And the big one, let's do some pondering time. Does it answer this question well? So what? Why is it interesting? Why are you bothering me with this? I've got lots of emails here as a journalist. So why is it so interesting? So remember these points from mini lesson 1. To be newsworthy, your story must be new, unusual, significant, about people, and STEM related. But don't stop there. Really think, what makes your story interesting? Maybe you won external funding for it. Did the project surprise you? If so, how? And quantify it, please. Why is the project a big deal for your school? Were you expecting something different? If so, what? Will it or did it transform your school? How? Give details. Give anecdotes as well. Examples. Would other schools be envious? Why? What amazing roles did teachers have? And remember that one about did it transform their teaching? Students' roles, impact on their learning, their behaviour, their engagement, key ones. And keep asking yourself, so what? And add your call to action. These can be just a line you can add to the end of your email. Could this be a story for you? Get in touch for more information. Please ring to organise an interview. What else would you like to know about the project? Let me know if you'd like to chat about it. So any questions? Connect to our Google Jamboard. I'll keep looking at that because I'm pre-recording this, so I'm going to have time to jump on that and have a bit of a look, or the chat function. So how do you get from pitch to bullseye? So before you can get your pitch out there, what does success look like for you when this news item is published or aired? Like, you can't probably say, okay, the story is published, our enrollments go up so much percent, or our student outcomes, NAPLAN results. You can't actually tie it to that, but just try and get what's the look and feel of success. Um, do you want your school community to be championing your school in subtle ways, let's say on social media, because of this project? Are they excited about it? So what does it look like? Try and get that idea. What do you want to read and know about, or who do you want to read or know about your school STEM news? Who's your target audience, your readership? Where are the eyeballs? Where are those eyeballs looking? At which media organisations? What are the key messages for your audience, the take-home messages that you want them to take on board? So what publication sites or media channels do you value? Where those eyeballs are, or the ears, if we're talking that way. So how many degrees of separation? Um, so the idea is, do you know any journalists? If not, what about people in your network? Do they know any journalists at these target publications, sites, or media organisations? Is that a way in? That might help. Is the timing of the publication airing important for you? So keep in mind the Australian Educator magazine comes out 4 times a year. Very long lead time. It's about 2 months from when I file the story to when it's actually published. So that can take ages. Education headquarters, I file the same day the story can go up. So that's quite different. Australian Teacher magazine, maybe about a month. So it depends. It could be days, it could be weeks, it could be months. Or in the case of the media department hanging on to the story, they said they had to approve before I sent it to one of the publications. That was 3 months waiting. Yeah, that sort of dipped into a whole new year. So each media organisation is unique. They have different political leanings, story genres, geographical areas that they cover. Their levels of resourcing are different. Journalists' level of experience and enthusiasm will be different too. When I was working for the Blaney Chronicle, the previous editor had a policy. Each week I will only do one school story. Now it didn't matter if the school had no news, um, he would just fill that hole with something else. So a school could have burnt down or had an amazing project that won multiple awards, but if it wasn't that school's week to be published, they just had to wait. So there's very different ways of operating. You've got to get to know the journalists. When I took over that role, I ran the story when there was merit. So some weeks there were no school stories, and other weeks there might have been two or three. So it was basically, if the news value merited that story running, it got in. So yeah, journalists' political leanings or personal leanings. Some publications or media organisations may ask you to advertise first before they cover your story. Run a mile. You want your story to get up because of its own merit. You shouldn't have to pay. Definitely not. So options for targeting. So I've listed many here, and I'm sure you've thought about these. Your local newspaper, a metropolitan newspaper, a regional newspaper, local radio stations, regional TV station, news website, national publication, education editor or journalist, think Jordan Baker of the Sydney Morning Herald, freelance education writer like me, state TV station, national TV station, current affairs show, probably for the more detailed ones, ABC radio science show. Now that's talking generically, not talking about Robin Williams' highbrow show, so it's any of the science shows they have there. An education influencer, such on social media, your state's education department media team. Look, they can come out, do the story, write the media release and send it out. So it means that all you're really doing is pitching to them, hey, media team, we think we've got a story. What do you reckon? So that might save you some time. It can take a long time for them to get sorted though. Ethnic newspapers or websites, don't forget those. International website if the story warrants it, and there's plenty more. The list can go on. So should you know which media organisation you're targeting before you start writing your pitch? Provocation. I would say find your story first, shape it, then consider the best fit or media organisation. Otherwise, you're contorting your story to fit the media organisation. So, for instance, a digital twinning story that we talked about earlier for a school, if you're trying to get that into a specialist tech magazine, it's all going to be very tech heavy, um, and it's probably not going to get up because a school's digital twinning project is not going to be as exciting as the Western Sydney Parklands or Singapore precinct digital twinnings project. So the uh, schools aren't necessarily early adopters in tech, so you'd be really contorting that story to fit that organisation. So get an idea for what's the best fit by actually getting to know what do they publish, what do they air, what do they talk about on the broadcast stations, for instance. So what do you think? How would you work out which media organisation to target with your STEM story and why? There we go, back to our Google Jamboard. I'll leave that on there and get you some music to listen to. Dawn Chorus in the Mountains. Here we go. It's a bit noisy. So just 2 minutes for this one. If you want to add your thoughts to the chat board or to Jamboard. We've got about 1 minute left. Okay, that takes you to 2 minutes. Thanks for taking part if you did. If you had a nice break, that's okay too. Lovely. So once you've sent your pitch, then what? If you hear nothing, resend an email in 3 to 5 business days. You might want to word it as, hope you don't mind me nudging this email a little higher up in your inbox. You might have overlooked it. So that can work. Just a very gentle one, not too confrontational. You might want to ring the journalist within a week. Just checking you got it. Is there anything I can help you with? Would you like more information? Do you think you'd be interested in covering that one? If they respond, ask them what they need. The idea is to be helpful. Do they need an interviewee? If so, who? When? Would they only interested in talking to the principal, or do they just want to talk to students? For instance, the Australian Educator and Australian Teacher magazine, we don't really talk to students that much. We're focused on teachers. That's our readership. Okay, photographs of what, when, where, and preferred format. When is their deadline? Remember, copy deadline, as in story deadline, is going to be different to photographic and different to advertising deadline. So just get clear on that. And once it's all done and dusted, your story has been published and aired. Yep, great. Email them to thank them, unless they botched it, and then you'd send a diplomatic complaint letter. It's so nice as a journo to get a story saying, hey, that was a great story. It's lovely working with you, as long as you're being genuine. Ask how you can work together more smoothly in future if you had a few little hurdles or bumps. What would they prefer? It's all about, as we said before, relationship building. So recapping that third skill, keep the pitches short. Email is best rather than phoning. Answer these questions: who, what, why, where, when, and how. Call to action and follow up. So let's workshop your STEM stories. Now, I might have already been doing this before the workshop started. Hopefully, you've been given the Jamboard link beforehand. Um, and I will also say that these slides, it's 100 slides, it's a lot. You do not want this PowerPoint presentation, but I'm going to condense it into the points and have those available too. So you've got a bit of a ready reckoner. Next time a STEM story falls into your lap and you think, yep, need to get this out there. So let's do a bit of revision. Okay, first skill, thinking like a journalist. Why is it newsworthy? It's got to be something unusual, it's interesting or significant. It's about people and STEM. Second skill, due diligence. Secure permission. Keep others at your school in the loop. Don't work alone. Your third skill, pitching. Keep it short. Email is best rather than phoning. Answer these questions: who, what, why, where, how, and when. Include your call to action and a follow-up. So thank you for checking out this workshop. I'll hop onto the chat and to the Jamboard shortly. As well as hopefully I've been doing this throughout this workshop. And yeah, hopefully we'll get those ideas uh, kind of evolving into pictures that are ready to send off. So if you have any questions, you know where to put them: chat box or the Jamboard. So, and that's how we've been liaising. And I've popped this slide here so you can see my contact details: margaret.paton, Paton, 1 @gmail.com. Yeah, thank you so much for taking part. See you later.